We are the Church of the Larger Fellowship, a Unitarian Universalist congregation with no geographical boundary, working toward creating a global spiritual community, rooted in profound love, which cultivates wonder, imagination, and the courage to act. Adapting to the COVID-19 pandemic has been difficult for many bricks and mortar congregations. Early on in the pandemic, we were in a unique position to assist many congregations with the transition. We hosted special episodes of The View, provided advice and counseling to religious professionals, and trained congregations for live streaming worship, all while providing robust online programming for our members. From worship to covenant groups, from classes to pastoral care, and from our monthly magazine to our letter writing ministry, we have found ways to build connection and community even through the screen. We have been a model for ministry on the margins, providing services for isolated Unitarian Universalists, becoming a spiritual lifeline for our members in prison, and investing in innovative ministry. We know better than anyone how deep and meaningful connections can be formed even from a distance. Unitarian Universalists have faced many challenges in these times, and we continue to persevere and to fight for justice and equity for all people, especially during moments of crisis. We are proud to be a leader in this faith movement, and we invite you to get involved in our ministry. We strive to be a place where anyone from anywhere can find spiritual refuge anytime they need it. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Larger Fellowship. We are so excited to bring you an all-new episode of The View. The View is a weekly Unitarian Universalist talk show discussing important faith-based topics from an anti-racist, anti-oppressive, and multicultural perspective. Every Thursday for the past 7 years, we have welcomed guests from every corner of the world. Our guests are writers, scholars, activists, and religious thought leaders who are shaping Unitarian Universalism and society for the 21st century and beyond. I hope today's show inspires you. Hope it builds your faith. Hope it gives you perspective to see the power of Unitarian Universalism at work in your life. Enjoy the message.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the 395th edition of the Voices of Unitarian Universalism, called The View or The VU by those of you who love us. I am DC Fortune. I will be the lead-off host today. Somebody's left me unsupervised, so that'll be fun. We've got a great panel today. We've got some folks from the I want to say this right, the youth, God bless us, Unitarian Universalist adults, oh, the hell with it. We're going to have a great show. Just bear with me. I'm running low on coffee this morning. Let's introduce everybody. I'm going to introduce my host first, then we'll do a little bit of UU roundup, and then we'll get right to our panel. So, Aisha Hauser, please save me from babbling. How are you today?
Hello, I am Aisha Hauser. My pronouns are she, her, and I am in the land of the Duwamish, the Coast Salish people, also known as Seattle, Washington. And how am I? We need to always ask that question with the caveat, how are you during the slow-moving apocalypse? Because really, I don't even know that, to say we're okay. Is anybody really okay? Really? It's the meme of the dog with the coffee and the fire. It's like, it's fine. Everything's fine. So that's how I am. Kiana Dene, how are you?
I just got my coffee. I know that hi y'all. It's noon here in Ann Arbor, Michigan, the land that used to be occupied. I don't like that word, but anyway, the Potawatomi people used to be here, And then Black and Indigenous folks helped the University of Michigan build this shit because they didn't build it on their own. I trust and believe in 1889. And so I'm here now. And I definitely smell the smoke. I definitely see the fire, but there's some really good stuff on Hulu and Netflix. I'm trying to get in before this shit really catches a blaze. I'm like, can the agenda slow down enough for me to, I mean, y'all keep talking about that, the Bridgerton, I might get into it, you know, before the smoke gets bad. So I'm probably not though. Just to be honest, don't talk to me about that. So anyway, I'm tired, but I'm good. I'm jet lagged. I just got some instant coffee, which is always Band-Aid coffee. Instant coffee is like it's gonna get there. I'm doing my best. Work with me. And so I have my Band-Aid coffee, and I'm in a good place today, and I'm excited to introduce to you my friend Janine down in the Zona.
The Zona. Hi, everyone. I'm Janine Gelsinger. I'm joining you from unceded Otham territory, also known as Phoenix, Arizona. And yeah, I'm fine. I'm white lady fine. DC, I'm super excited though about our guests because they are people I know from Line 3 when we all went on a little field trip to Minnesota together to cause some trouble when a oil company was trying to install did successfully install some really terrible pipelines right through the headwaters of the Mississippi, breaking a bunch of treaties with the Anishinaabe and indigenous people of that land. And we went up there to try to stop it. So I'm super excited. I'm going to throw it back to you if you want to introduce our folks today.
All right. Yes, thank you. I'm a little bit better collected, but only a little bit. I'm excited for our show today. We have it's the UU Young Adults for Climate Justice, and this program is going to be so cool because the UUA has some really conflicted stuff happening around climate justice, and it's gonna be a really interesting discussion. Let's do UU Roundup first, just to make sure we're hitting the things that's going on in UU land. The one piece of news I've got is that I was last week voted onto the Ministerial Fellowship Committee. Yeah, we'll see if they regret that decision before too long.
Who's going to be on my MFC committee? Who's going to be on my MFC committee? They're literally going to have to hire lay people at this point. Like, I literally know all of you.
So do we want to tell folks
totally
what the MFC is, just in case we have new views?
The MFC is the Ministerial Fellowship Committee, which is this group of people who ministerial candidates interview with before they are approved for preliminary fellowship as ministers in our denomination. And once you're approved for preliminary fellowship, you are then authorized to go into the search process and authorized to be ordained. And it's a bit of a gatekeeping thing, and there are pluses and minuses to that. In
layman's terms,
we want our
in layman's terms, y'all.
Hmm?
That's DC just gave y'all the like UU goodies, like the UU version in the layman's terms. They're the people who tell you if you are REV. You don't get your REV till those people say you get your REV. Right. That's it.
Right. And it can be an absolutely terrifying 60-minute interview. And so one of the things I hope to do by my participation in there is to make it a little less fucking scary. So yeah, UU Roundup. Kiana Danae, what do you have?
I just wanted to congratulate the folks who have graduated from UU Seminary, particularly Starkey School of Ministry. I believe Meadville is this week, but don't quote me. I'm a little jet lagged. So all of those folks who have graduated in any capacity and matriculated, I honor you. And yeah, so that was that. That's all I wanted to do.
Yeah. Aisha, what you got, hon?
So I am winding down my presidency of the Liberal Religious Educators Association. I'm on for another 4 weeks, and then it will be handed over to the absolutely extraordinary Catherine Childs, who is Loretta's continental. Catherine is in Canada, and so we are a continental organization. And I'm excited. You know, it felt like I've been president for about 14 years because basically my presidency was over the pandemic, and so it was great. And Loretta and the UU Ministers Association will be joining for ministry days at General Assembly, which is also very exciting. So
It's about damn time.
it's pretty cool. Very excited. And the UUMA, it was actually, I want to give them credit, who invited us and said we would like to invite Loretta to join us for Professional Day. So thank you for that. Yay. Yes, very cool. And I'm excited also to talk to our guests because it is a wee bit of a controversial topic. I think we should jump right in. I got lots to say about this.
Let's check with Janine. You got anything for UU Roundup, honey?
You know, I guess in many states it is the end of legislative season, and we've seen some pretty crappy stuff happen out of South Carolina last night. And so just shout out to all the UUs that are at their state ledge in Texas and Florida and South Carolina and North Carolina, fighting last minute bills that every state is trying to sneak through. Thank you for your work. We're with you. Don't give up.
Yeah. Thank you, Janine, for highlighting that. All right. So let me introduce our guests. We have Antoinette Scully, she, they, faith-based organizer living in Los Angeles and works for the UU Women's Federation. She joined the Young Adult Divestment Caucus in summer of 2022. She's an environmental justice advocate and works to build inclusive spaces in both person and online. And we have Zoe Johnston, her, lifelong UU, based in Philly, works as the network coordinator for UU Young Adults for Climate Justice, a caucus of UU Ministry for Earth. So he's a graduate student, God bless you, studying international peace and conflict. Oh, God bless you, even more, conflict resolution. Her work is focused on building international communities with the lens toward liberation. Zoe has been part of the UU Young Adult Divestment Caucus since 2021 and sees their work as putting our UU theology of love, justice, and community into practice. So just what I'd like to do is, why don't we start off with just the basics for folks who don't know what the Climate Justice Caucus is about. And whichever one of you feels more comfortable, jump in and tell us how this thing got started and what it does.
I'll let Zoe go since she's been in it a lot longer.
Okay.
Yeah, I think before anything, I think I should name what our group is and what we do. So we're a group of young adults that are calling on our faith association to divest from all aspects of the fossil fuel industry. So not just the fossil fuel companies, but also the banks that fund fossil fuel projects, the companies that build the pipelines, etc. And so we have created a business resolution that would change the policy of the UUA if it's voted on at General Assembly. And our call is for that money to be fully divested, and it's worth about $13 million. And our call is that money would then be redistributed as reparations to Indigenous, Black, and Brown communities that have been impacted by environmental harm. And so that's our resolution, but we've been working on it far longer than the resolution has been published. And so our group has been together in some form or another for the past 2 years. And we first wrote a responsive resolution that you may have seen in 2021, which was specifically focused on divestment from the banks. And so this is our business resolution. It has a little bit more weight behind it. So yeah, I think that's a good place to start.
All right. Antoinette, what have you got to you're newer to this
I'm
group,
newer to
but you've come from a different background.
Yeah,
Tell me about what's going on for you.
I'm newer to it, and I am young adult adjacent. So I'm aged out of it, but I'm just like, so I'm still attached to this resolution specifically. But more so, I came to it from the activist perspective. I had not been a part of a lot of the conversations happening in the UU world around divestment before 2021 and 22. And on this Line 3 trip, we learned that money that was being funneled to the police from the oil company was money that our church was invested in. So like at the time, our common endowment fund was invested in Enbridge. And so for me, it was a way to kind of give back in that way. Like, wow, we found out this thing. And so I've been a part of this for the past year, more in like a spiritual mentory direction, because I'm not the young adult there to kind of give a little bit of perspective in an older capacity. So it's been wonderful though.
I think it would be great to jump right into the controversy, because the truth is, folks are shitting a brick at the idea of what, I don't even know if it's hyperbole or not, that it will basically end the UUA. Here, I'll also tell you, Shelter Rock has something like, I don't know, close to $500 million. This is one congregation where divestment would also, I'm going to use the word impact, quite underestimating that. Now, this is to say the complexity of this fuck shit system. And I assure you, I am not a fan of violent extractive capitalism, even a little bit. And what I guess my question is, and I don't even disagree with wanting to divest reasons. And what happens if that divestment, and I'm all about reparations, glory, hallelujah. And is the trade-off basically ending the UUA? And I don't say that hyperbolically, but I mean, if the response, that's the fear, what is the dialogue around that? Because I think it's important to name that. I do think that's people's ultimate fear.
It's a fear, but is it true? Can you speak to that?
About it. Yeah.
Yeah, Zoe or Antoinette, one of you?
So I'll say from the perspective of how, one, we haven't been able to have actual conversations with the investment committee. So we haven't been able to actually go back and forth and say, this is what we think should happen, and then say, well, maybe we should do it this way. We've been shut out from conversations. And so we've had to build something in our own silo based on work that's been done before us and dismantling harm. The second part of that is, it seems, and I'm not the numbers person, but it seems like when they say it's going to dismantle the UUA, what they mean is we're not going to make as much money as we have in the past. And that's very different than we will no longer have any money, because that's not what we're asking for.
Gotcha.
So
I can speak to the numbers part.
So we can speak to that.
Let's talk about numbers.
Okay. Yeah, please.
Yeah, so recently the UUA published a memorandum that outlines the operational and financial impact of our resolution. And so you can see that memo, but you can also see our annotated version of it, which kind of responds directly to all the things. And just wanting to name that the kind of amount that we're working from is around 13 million. And there's, that could change based on the mutual funds and the things that we don't know. But the UUA made 90 million during the pandemic, profiting off of the pandemic. And I think one thing that I'm trying to recall what the memo had lined out. Yeah, but I think that we're working with an amount of money that feels really powerful for people that are doing reparations work. To say 13 million for reparations feels so significant, but to say 13 million in the scope of a $250 million endowment, which is what the CEF is very different. And I think there's an endowment payout policy that kind of outlines how that could be paid out in a way that would not financially bankrupt the UUA.
Kiana Danae, darling, you're muted.
Because I was drinking coffee, trying not to make that slurpy sound on the screen. So I'm going to ask some questions that are a little remedial because I participate in capitalism as a form of survival. I'm not engaged in capitalism at a level to understand what it means that we have a system that is vested in. I understand, but I want other folks to understand. I guess what I'm trying to get at. How did we as a faith denomination invest in something that we now need to de-invest in, and that level of disinvestment would rattle our system so much it would rattle our system so much we feel unable to leave it. So in my mind, I'm like, there's other systems we've been engaged in as a culture and as a community that we realized no longer worked, and we changed them, or they manifested, right? They moved or migrated. We understood that you couldn't get free labor, so we translated it into prison industrial complex, right? And then we had to build a bunch of systems to make that system work, right? So how did we get into a place where investing money in oil companies or wherever we've invested it, now we need to step back and say we need to de-invest? How does all of that work? What does it mean to disinvest, y'all? I guess I want you to break some of that language down for folks who may not understand what it means to disinvest. And also the other word you all just used that I want to catch you all on is endowment. What does it mean to have an endowment? Because I'm from Povertyville, and an endowment is $20 you forgot in your winter jacket, right? So can you give a little more depth to what that concept means?
Yeah, so the UUA has an endowment that is connected to the stock market, basically. And so some churches have individual endowments. It might be the thing that you put money into, and you may take a little bit out based on the interest that you've made that year. And you can spend it depending on how your bylaws are. For churches that are too small to have individual endowments, they pay into this common fund that the UUA takes care of for you. The stock market and mutual funds, it can be confusing for people. Again, I'm not the numbers person. And so because that can be confusing, instead of having each individual church say, well, we'll take care of the stock market and we'll follow the financing and we'll do all of this, the UUA says they will do it for you, and we will invest in things that are under our shared common values. And so I'll let Zoe talk about the divestment part. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that piece about how did we get to this point is the big one. And I think a lot of it ties into this fact that we are trying to survive under capitalism, I think, for a very long time. Being in the stock market seemed like the way to build the financial capacity of the UUA. But I think that there's a lot of harm in that, to say that we are going to grow our faith organization based on these systems that we've been told to invest in, but then they're so contrary to our values. And so going back to that question of like, will this lead to the ruin of the UUA? I think one of the things that comes up for us is, why is it that all of our investments in fossil fuels are so integral to the continuation of the UUA? And why is it that the very stability of our faith is tied up in continuing harm, continuing climate crisis, continuing indigenous genocide? And so thinking about, this probably started from a place of wanting to build financial stability, but it was at the expense of living up to our values. And so now our work is to realign those values with our financial practices.
May I jump in here? Yes, and that's always been true. The Unitarians have always profited off of the slave trade, off of really heinous practices, because Unitarian Universalism is not separate from the United States capitalist system. And so I guess my wondering, or what's coming up for me, is because here's the thing, is I've sat down with folks, I will not name names, white people from certain financial sectors who are UUs. And, you know, one dude says to me, well, I believe in capitalism. I said, well, I believe in farmers market capitalism. Let's make something and take it to a table and sell it. I do not believe in this violent extractive capitalism with which this entire system that we have exported globally is operating, right? So I guess what's coming up for me is we've never not done this. This is not new with fossil fuels. A lot of the endowments in New England especially come from cotton, from slave trade. So there's been a deep cognitive dissonance within Unitarian Universalism and the United States, we are not separate, of how we get this money and how we've had it for a long time. And that's why I talk about reparations. So I guess all this rambling is to say, I wonder what it would look like to start with reparations. I mean, I agree with the divestment, because the other piece of it, I don't want to lose. There's a lot of reparations that white wealthy people who've been allowed to inherit wealth for generations owe Black and brown people, descendants of enslaved Africans and indigenous people. So what would it look like to start with reparations? I'm not asking you to change anything for GA. This is a meta conversation. So that's what's coming up for me, because we've never not been, we being Unitarians and Universalists have never not profited and been an integral part of violent extractive capitalism. We are unable, liberals in this country are not good at reconciling their cognitive dissonance. I will tell you, the election of the hate pumpkin when was he elected? 2016. And George Floyd, I think, were seminal moments, which, how sad for white liberals to be like, oh, there seem to be problems here. And so maybe people are waking up, I don't know. But so I want to talk more about reparations, because I don't disagree about disinvestment. And the second part of that is really, really crucial, because there are people who give reparations today. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, so I'm also not technically a young adult, but I'm maybe the baby of the View hosts, and a little bit closer. And I guess I really want to highlight from some of our perspectives, or even thinking about our kids, like the future of Unitarian Universalism is important. Sure, we want our institutions to be there. Sure, we want our retirement funds to be there. But like, what if there's no planet? I mean, honestly, if we don't do something about fossil fuels.
Well, sure, if you want to do that, I mean.
I do, because if we don't do something about fossil fuels, we're fucked. Like, it doesn't matter what institutions are in place if in 30 years we haven't done anything about fossil fuels. So I wonder if you want to speak from a young adult perspective, because, we've been talking a lot on this show, even and in Unitarian Universalism, about what young folks are calling on us to do when we talk about Article 2, when we talk about how we express our values and what the future of our faith is. And I just want us to listen with kind of maybe that perspective in mind, as like, who gets to own the future of our faith, and who gets to make decisions about how we show up and live our values, and what it looks like to act on those values and put our financial resources behind the values that we preach.
In alignment with that, Janine, some of what I talk about in the worlds and the circles I'm moving in is the fact that I'm a sandwich minister. I'm a sandwich generation minister. The fact that I have this older generation of people I need to support because they've created and held the space of Unitarian Universalism enough so that I could get here. But I also need to create space and open the door for an entire generation of people who will be around for the next 30, 40 years holding it down. So in a way, as you're talking, Janine, what comes up for me is this parallel between how do we create the UU that's going to sustain us and my children and my great grandchildren is the same way that I think about Article 2. Do we have a faith? Do we have a language? Do we have a way to talk about our faith in a way that is not appealing? I'm not talking about mass marketing, but is relatable and sustainable over time to the people who have to carry it the longest, not the people who are about to set it down. Do you understand what I'm saying? So how do we create a sustainable economic model inside of capitalism, whether that's reparations, as Aisha was speaking to, or disinvestment, which I hear Zoe and Antoinette talk about? How do we find pathways to do all of these things? And as Zoe said, in alignment with our values. And I use the word values intentionally and not principles, because the reality is that if this faith is going to be sustainable for another 50, 60 years, you know what? It has to be in the language and the messaging that works for Antoinette and Zoe's community, not my community. My call is to hear you all and to help you bring that energy and honor those values. It is not to tell you what your faith should be because it felt comfortable when I walked in the door. Any party that I've ever attended that was the best party I attended, y'all, you know what? When I walked in, it was hot because the music was bumping. But we took it to a next level, and that meant other people could come in the door. So that's what I'm trying to do. So I guess I want to just turn the floor back to Annette and Antoinette, I'm sorry, to say, how do we help you all create a sustainable organization that you all can hold, whether that looks like reparations or divestment? How do we give you the faith community that you need to thrive?
That is deep. That is deep. I want to say one thing about the financial piece very quickly, and that part of what they are saying is going to happen is not so much that we won't even make enough money or that we don't have enough money to do this, is that we don't have enough staff capacity to take care of this common endowment fund in this way once we divest. Those are very different than we can't divest. It is that we don't have enough money to do it the way we want to do it. And my partner always says, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I wonder if some of that is wrapped up in, well, if we can't do it exactly the perfect way that we have envisioned, we shouldn't do it at all, and we should kick it down the road just a little bit longer. And so those are some thoughts on the financial piece and how much money it is and what it's wrapped into. But I think that Zoe can speak more on what she wants from her faith.
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to that piece about reparations, like, I think that is a practice that is so in line with our values and so in line with the values that we are trying to live into, to practice love, to not just have love as this feeling, but as a practice, and to say that we are in solidarity, we are practicing justice, we are creating the world we want to see, we are imagining the future, and we are repairing harm. Because I think that's what the reparations piece does, is that it allows us to respond to those centuries of us being complicit. Because, like, Aisha, you're so right. Like, it is centuries, and for us we are responding to what we have witnessed in the past decade, right? There is still harm that's happening. And so for Antoinette and I, we were at the front lines of Line 3 with Janine and witnessed and experienced a lot of violence. And so for us, to have such an experience, to say, like, our money from the UUA is going into Enbridge. Enbridge is then paying these local police officers who are inflicting violence against Indigenous communities and UU allies that are showing up for them. That was a very clear moment to say there is harm that needs to be repaired here. But just because that's a very visible interaction doesn't mean that we can't also respond to all of the things that have happened before us. And there are deep lineages of people that have been trying to respond to this harm and trying to do this work and to name that our faith has been complicit in these systems. And so I think moving forward, like, we have to name what our role has been. And I think we're trying to create something new. And one thing in terms of, like what our faith is now, I just want to name that the leadership of our group is so amazing. We are a multiracial, fully queer, young adult centered group, and it feels powerful for us to be creating something together and to be in deep relationship with each other. Yeah, Antoinette, I don't know if you want to speak any more about the power that we have as a group in terms of bringing all of our identities into a space fully and truly.
Yeah, I think it's really important to name that when we're trying to build the UUism of the future that we want to see, that we as a group, we started with a covenant. We started with the practices and the promises we would make to each other individually, and then kept that promise to make sure that we could build this futuristic existence for the rest of our association. We jokingly say we're 40% Black. There's 5 of us and 2 of us are Black, and that is a higher percentage than many of the UU organizations that we participate in. We're femme-led, we are queer-led, we are a group of folks that see each other quite intensely and deeply, and in that relationship we have built hopefully a way for our association and our religion to continue thriving. We don't see this in any way as dismantling anything. And I think that's probably the biggest pivot in language, is that this is for us to build up the type of values we have and show it as deeply as possible, both in our care practices and in the work that we do, and in financially what we support and who we support.
You just name a disappointment in the UUA that they didn't talk to you folks. That's bullshit, truly. So I just want to say that.
That is bullshit.
Because you're doing some extraordinary work. And I just want to reiterate what Janine asked earlier, because that's a friggin' sermon right there. Who gets to own the future of our faith? I would say young adults, motherfuckers. Ooh, okay. I'm going to.
I remember Aisha saying backstage, I'm not going to talk much today.
Sometimes
there was air in the room, so Aisha's gonna talk. It's about 12:43, and so this is where we do what I lovingly refer to as kind of the round the corner, and make sure that the things that feel most important to Antoinette and Zoe to express in this space get heard. And I also just make sure that if there's other folks in the co-host team, that we start to round that corner and look at how do we bring this conversation to a close, or even better, where's the next time to continue this conversation? How do we keep the conversation going, right? Because you all aren't going anywhere. You're a part of our faith. You're an active part of who we are, and you have to hold we're doing what I call the Atlas shift, right? We're shifting off somebody else's shoulders, and eventually we're going to shift onto yours. So I guess I just really want to make sure folks have space to talk about how do we move forward well, and move forward and forward moving, right? I know, Janine, you had a bunch of questions in the box that they moved so fast I couldn't read them. But I want to, I'm not going to say you had a lot to say, but I guess I want to say I think that you had a lot of energy around this particular topic. So I want to make sure either some of your fire gets lit or that it gets addressed.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the kind of grappling that I think we need to do to have a future as Unitarian Universalists. This is the kind of conversations we need to come to the table for. And I see so much in my work that one of the biggest things that gets in our way is conflict avoidance. We don't want to grapple. We don't want to have the conflict. And not we, everybody, right? Like those of us affected by dominant cultural norms of white supremacy culture and patriarchy and just niceness, right? Like, but if we don't come to the table and say, what would it mean to do this divestment? What would it mean to live our values as Unitarian Universalists and say, you know what? This money wasn't ours in the first place because it was stolen from the earth on stolen land, promised by treaties to Indigenous people that we had no rights to in the first place. And then we used it to bankroll our enterprise, and now we need to make amends. And so if we become the kind of faith that lives out our values in those kind of ways, why would young adults ever want to be part of our faith? Because we're no better than, the hypocrisy that many of us saw I grew up Catholic, right? I left that faith because of the hypocrisy I saw when we were not living our values. And so if we don't think about how are we going to come to the table and grapple, and if people have fears like, how is this going to affect our retirement funds? How is this going to affect our church budgets? Like, that's okay to ask those questions. But what I'm hearing from Zoe and Antoinette is they're willing to come to the table. They're willing to say, you know what, if our resolution, the way we wrote it, has unintended consequences that are going to really affect a small fellowship who doesn't want to fire their DRE of color, right? Then let's come to the table and figure out how we can do this, how we can divest, how we can give reparations, and how we can continue our future of Unitarian Universalism. What I hear them saying is they're willing to do that. So who is not then? And those people need to come to the table. It's not a time for conflict avoidance. It's a time to be bold and courageous and live into the future of our faith.
So 100, we're firing and letting go of staff of all stripes and kind right now, and we're vested. So if we're vested and we're letting staff go and firing staff and going down to 3 or 4 people running a 400 or 500 people church trying to do everything with everyone, if we've got DREs working 10 or 12 hours and getting, not punished, but per se held accountable for the fact that we've had COVID and families aren't coming back, if we can do that kind of shit and we're vested, if we divest, it gives people even more reason or excuse, or opens the gate for more harm in terms of firing and letting go staff. So if we want to use vestment as a way to talk about we'll have to let go staff, y'all doing that now, so what's your excuse? Black and brown folks are getting harmed and leaving this faith left and right because they're not being emotionally, they're not safe. Physically, they're not safe in communities, and economically, it's not enough to keep somebody being harmed to continue. You're gonna harm me for $40,000 a year. You ain't gonna be. You can't keep rolling up on me at $40,000 and hurting me. So that narrative doesn't even play out. I'm sorry, y'all. That just caught me. When I think about all my Black and brown folks who are leaving the faith, that caught me.
True.
Mm-hmm.
Our friend Karishma says, yes, exactly. So immoral for us to use fossil fuels and prison labor to further our causes. Antoinette or Zoe, do you have a response to that? Do you guys work with Karishma? I'm not sure if she's on your crew.
All young adults know each other, right?
I don't know Karishma.
I do.
I do.
Hi, Carrie. Yes. Zoe, would you talk a little bit more though about what are your conversations with other young adults about why they're UUs and what do they want to see in the future? What do you all want to see?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what Antoinette and I were saying about how our group operates. We built a covenant at the beginning of this organizing, and yeah, the piece about organizing, we are coming in as community organizers. We're involved in local campaigns. We are showing up in our communities. That we bring that experience into spaces. But more than anything, we gather as Unitarian Universalists. We do this not just as justice work, but seeing our work as a spiritual practice. And so I think naming the way that our group has come together, we are practicing our vision for what Unitarian Universalism could be. And so the way that we created a covenant together was not just sticking some phrases up on a poster board, but it was a very intentional hour-and-a-half meeting where we came up with what we were going to promise each other and what our needs were in the space. And we meet every Saturday for an hour and a half, and we have for the past
year.
8-9 months. Yeah, a year. So we've spent a lot of time together, and in a way, it feels like church. You know, that repeated coming together, starting with opening words, ending with closing words, doing a check-in. And so we have that same structure, but the content in the middle is one that is so based on relationships and so grounded in how do we show up for each other. And so covenant, not just as words on a page, but the way that we treat each other and the way that we show up for each other. So I think for young adults, you know, what we're doing is imagining and creating the future of Unitarian Universalism. We're not just saying what we want it to be, but we are practicing it in our spaces. And I think the more that people spend with young adults and youth, the more that they see that the future is already in practice. It's not something that exists out of reach, but it is being brought ever closer. And I think that that's what we've been doing.
Yeah, I want to say that one of the most magical experiences, really, and to give you a sense of how not only do we meet every week, but we are in different places, and so we all live in different places, and so we're all on different time zones. And we recently had the chance to together on a shared group experience at the beginning of April. We got to go to New Orleans together and participate in a climate justice conference together in person. And we were able to use the covenant we made a year ago to continue to be in relationship with each other, to check in with each other, to restore harm that was happening in real time for us. And so when I think about what young adults want from their religion, I agree with Zoe, like we are living into it right now. And so this divestment resolution is not how do we want to see our religion in the future? It is how do we want to live into our current religious practices right now? And so we're doing a thing that needs to happen right now so that we can be more in alignment with the values we say we hold.
And Antoinette and Zoe, as we come to the end of the hour, I guess I really want to just say to you all, I know that you wanted to talk about disinvestment, but for me, some of what I needed from this dialogue, and I'm selfish, I said it, is that I needed to know how to move in alignment with you all, because you all are living the future, whether it be about divestment, whether it be about our values, whether it be about religious education, whatever the topic is, to me, you are the voices I need to listen to and start to integrate as I move forward, because I also, like I said, that sandwich piece, I need to honor who's been here, right? That's part of the teeter-totter balance. So I want to just take a moment to thank you all for being willing to talk about not just divestment, but the bigger reality that you all are making an impact in our faith in ways that matter, that we need to collectively be paying attention to. And I don't want to, Kiana Dene speaking, don't want to diminish your work down to just the divestment, because that's only one aspect or element of what you all are trying to address and build and work on. So I want to thank you for being willing to step away from the divestment piece and to talk a little bit more about how we as adults, as if you're not adults, I didn't mean to say that, I'm sorry. As we as
old people.
What'd you say, DC?
We as old people, or me as old people.
Yes, you get to be old people. I'm not old people. I'm just seasoned. I'm like a cast over here. So me and my cast iron status. I just want to thank you for being willing to answer some of my questions, to talk to me, to help me understand. And I hope that I can find ways to genuinely be not sidecar relationship, but in relationship with you all in meaningful, sustainable ways, and not just, I don't want to just come talk to y'all when I need a table moved, and I don't want to come talk to y'all because you might have some new slang I need to learn, right? I want to be in relationship with you, so I'm going to keep working on that. So thank you for the window to do that.
All right, listen, I can't not butt in as an organizer. There's 5 minutes left. What's the ask? What's next for people?
Right.
So we'll be at General Assembly. And we're calling on delegates to vote yes on our resolution. That's the biggest piece. We have dates coming up where delegates can connect deeper with us. And Zoe, I didn't pull those dates up, and now I don't remember when they are. we have dates to connect with us. We will be June 3rd and June 4th. And you can learn a lot more of this about this on our Instagram, because that's where young people hang out, I guess. That's what we have. And so it really is just being in community with us, like you're saying, Quantity, is that we want to be able to have these conversations with you, and we're not pushing people out. We're not saying, maybe the other folks in the group can say differently, but like, I'm not saying divestment or bust. I'm saying divestment, yes, and work with us so that we can get to where we all are together. And so that, I think, is really important. And you can send us an email at uuyadivestment@gmail.com. Same with their socials, UUYA divestment.
This deserves our grappling. This deserves a conversation. This deserves our deep discernment.
Yes.
And it deserves our ear, because these folks are creating the future of our faith right now. And we all need to listen if we want to survive beyond where we are.
True that.
Facts.
Okay, we've got about 4 minutes left. Anybody have that thing that, I wish we talked about, but we never got to, that you want to talk about, that you want to mention?
I just want to keep having these conversations. You'll notice that our resolution isn't publicized as much. It is, it's a busy GA. We have Article 2, we have the presidential the election, but I think that our resolution is so entwined with both of those things. All of these things on the agenda are about what is the future of our faith. And so for us, our resolution should be talked about, should be in these conversations. And an additional ask, in addition to finding us on social media, emailing us, doing all the things, voting yes, is just to talk about this in your congregations, to talk about it with your people, to make it known, and to have these conversations. Because, yeah, as Janine said, it's worth grappling with, and it's worth having this named and transparent.
And for what it's worth, Antoinette commented that the UUA, let's just say the UUA has not been supportive of this movement at all in any way, shape, or form.
They've actually voted the board has voted not to support this resolution. So it's been explicitly said that they would rather delegates vote no.
Okay.
Oh.
And can I just say that the UUA operates sometimes like a corporation.
Oh, a lot of
and
times.
it serves the congregations, not necessarily the values. Ask any minister who has dealt with the UUA about one thing or another. We understand that the UUA serves the congregations, the member congregations, and yes, or donors. That is true. And that is an institutional thing that needs to be grappled with. And I think that fear is probably a large part of where you're getting that pushback, because people are so frightened of the unknown. Well, we're at 12:59. I want to thank our guests, and I want to say good luck to you. Good luck to you at GA. I'm looking forward to meeting you there. Karishma, who wrote in, Karishma and I were co-leads on the Covenant and Conflict team.
Nice.
So I'm looking forward to, because I'm the one you want to de-escalate things, right?
Yes.
So, oh, God bless us. So Danza de Luna writes in, so take that, folks who complain the CLF is too entwined with UUA politics.
I never heard that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I missed that rumor.
Oh, God bless us. Right. Well, thank you both. Thank you both for coming on. Janine, thank you for sort of subbing in as part of this little cohort. And for the conversation, and good luck at GA. And I thank our guests, and we'll see you next week, everybody. Thank you, and have a great week.
Have a great week.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us. Special thanks to those of you who give generously to this ministry. It is because of you that this ministry is possible. You can click the link in the description to give now, or visit clfuu.org/give for more information. We hope you will join us next week for another episode of The View.